Okay, so yeah, thanks Max for that introduction. Before I start, I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we're meeting on. As Max said, it's the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So I'm Pauna, and I'm the Head of Partnerships at Carbon Neutral. So as we all know, right now we're in that current climate crisis, and to address this, we need to strike a balance between the emissions generated and removed. And that's how Carbon Neutral started. We were planting trees to draw down emissions from trees and put it in our soil, back into our trees. But then as we grew over the last 20 years, we've been able to create this vast, large carbon sink, which happens to be the Yarra Yarra Biodiversity Corridor, pictured here in the introductory slide. And it is the largest biodiverse reforestation carbon sink in Australia, here in Western Australia. So today I'm going to talk about a few things about net zero, about carbon neutrality, carbon credits. And I'm sure being the Net Zero Network, you guys probably know a lot about this, and probably some people in the room know more about it than I do. So I really encourage you to share your knowledge and give feedback and hopefully have a good conversation about this after the presentation. So net zero, we've heard about it before. It's about all of the greenhouse gases. We're talking about carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, hydrofluorocarbon, hydrochlorofluorocarbon that has been emitted from all the different activities throughout the world. And to get to net zero, we need to try and strike that balance and be able to remove all that and be able to take it away from the atmosphere. And in being able to maintain that balance, that's where we can limit global warming to a sustainable level. On the flip side, carbon neutrality is just about looking at carbon dioxide from the activities from particular entities or organisations, countries as well. So these entities and organisations look at what they're generating in terms of carbon dioxide, and then from their own activities, from offsetting through carbon credits, how can they bring that balance down and again get that neutrality and neutralise what they've emitted. So you've probably heard it a lot, carbon neutral, net zero. They've been used interchangeably. That's the word I was looking for. At the end of the day, we're still just trying to find that balance so that the amount that is contributing is less than what we're contributing is drawing down, and be able to create that balance where we're not putting the earth in a worse place than before. So as Max said before, Australia, we're not in a very good position as in terms of emitting per capita, we're the highest in the developed world. So as part of that, Australia has put in a lot of different mechanisms for big emitters to be accountable. So they need to be able to measure, to reduce and offset based on the Clean Energy Regulator. And the Clean Energy Regulator is an government agency that puts in a lot of processes and police procedures where big emitters need to try and help create a positive impact on the greenhouse gas emissions that is occurring in Australia. So since we all have a part in this world and we all have our role to play, organisations, regardless of the size, can also contribute to this sustainability journey that we're all on. And for Carbon Neutral, a lot of our partners do come to us on a voluntary sense because they just want to do something for the environment. They're passionate and want to do something sustainable. And usually we would help them obtain this sustainability journey through 3 fundamental steps, which is measure, reduce, and offset. The first step, measuring, with a lot of organisations is just to understand what their impact is like. So we're measuring scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, all these different emission activities. And from there, they can regularly measure and monitor how they're doing. The second part is reduce. So after we've done that baseline measure, what can we do better? what's something that are quick wins, what are some long-term goals, and that's where we start planning. But in the meantime, while that's happening, there's also a space for offsets. To get to that net zero or that carbon neutrality, we need to look at different ways to get there. And if we're just waiting for those reduction activities, we're kind of missing out on being able to have an impact now through carbon credits and carbon offsets. So what are carbon credits? A lot of people might think it's a dirty word, but in essence, it is tradable units generated from large-scale projects that have a significant impact in drawing down those carbon emissions from the atmosphere. There are so many different types of carbon projects out there, but we can classify it into three broad categories of the types of carbon projects. So we've got projects that would avoid emissions, we've got projects that would reduce emissions, and we've got projects that would capture and store emissions. So avoid emissions, as its name suggests, it would stop further carbon dioxide from being released and generated. So a very common avoided emission project would be renewable energy. For a carbon reduction project, carbon is still generated from those activities, but to a lesser extent. So an example would be an improved energy efficient cook stove project in developing countries. So those in developing countries, they're still using traditional fuel methods like wood, but with an improved energy efficient cook stove, they would need less wood so that it will be decreasing the rate of deforestation, and also will be having less emissions from burning of the wood. So there, it's still creating carbon emissions, but at a reduced state. And the last one is carbon capture and storage. So this, as it sounds, is capturing it and storing it. So a very common one in my industry is reforestation, which is what carbon neutral does. So yeah, we're capturing the carbon through the trees, storing it back into the trees and in the soil. But of course, there's also, for big mining industries, they could do industrial carbon capture and be able to store that underground in stable geological formations. So carbon credits enable organisations to invest in projects that can avoid, reduce, capture carbon emissions and help them compensate their own emissions generated. Nevertheless, carbon credits are not the silver bullet, and it's vital to address the pros and cons of their use. So I'll start off with the pros. So firstly, people may question the actual impact of their emissions when they're purchasing carbon credits. Why would an organisation in Perth be making a difference by purchasing carbon offsets of a renewable energy in India? Well, when you purchase carbon credits, you are actually contributing to the global reduction of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Because as carbon project developers, we really need this funding to be able to expand, develop, and also create new projects. Sorry, I went up. So as you know, Carbon Neutral is a reforestation offsets project developer. We are a profit for purpose. So every time we sell offsets or gain profits from any of our services, we put it back into our projects. So this year alone, Carbon Neutral planted on over 3,000 hectares. And we wouldn't have been able to do this if we weren't able to generate profits from the sale of carbon credits. And from being able to create such a large project, we are creating a very significant carbon sink to be able to draw down all these carbon emissions. Can you imagine how much time, effort, and resources organisations would need to reduce their internal emissions? But if you were to purchase some carbon credits, you're already contributing to projects that are already in operation and are readily available for you to use to offset your organisation's carbon emissions. In addition to sequestering and capturing the carbon, a lot of projects can also have co-benefits. So co-benefits can be impacting the natural environment, social, and also economics. So again, I'll use our reforestation project again, because I know the operations quite well. So our reforestation project, we plant about 40 to 60 different species on every site. So in planting broad biodiverse species, we're able to bring back a lot of native flora and fauna. And also because we also plant on degraded farmland, we're also addressing a lot of issues that are hangover from traditional farming practices. So like when we're reforesting, we're taking out a lot of the excess nutrients from all the fertilizers farmers previously used. So taking out those excess nutrients would prevent eutrophication in waterways, especially in high periods of rainfall. We're also helping lowering the water table. So a lot of our land is affected by dry land salinity. Replanting them brings down the water level, helps with salinity. Also with the mixed species, we're improving the soil biome from all the herbicides and pesticides that were used in traditional farming practices. And also being able to make sure that the land is productive again, so that it will also prevent soil erosion. So that's just in the natural environment. Of course, the project could also build employment opportunities. So we do hire quite a lot of locals. We'd hire backpackers as well. And them having employment opportunities are also positively impacting the local economic area. And also on another basis, it's probably less visual, but it also improves a lot of people's physical and mental health by being able to see or visit that we're reforesting all these places and getting that sense of well-being that something's actually happening and the natural environment is getting repaired and improved. So therefore, in purchasing carbon credits, entities aren't just reducing and removing their gross carbon emissions, they're also contributing to that overall ecosystem that we're all operating in. And for a lot of businesses too, carbon credits aren't just for their carbon footprint, they've also been able to use all these co-benefits for their CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG, environmental social governance reporting. So all these can help them be able to submit their reporting. So although there are lots of benefits in investing in carbon credits, we also understand there are a lot of concerns about a lot of these projects. So I'm sure a few of you here are a little bit skeptical about carbon credits. So just a bit of a show of hands, who is worried about the legitimacy or realness of a lot of these carbon projects and reduction claims? That's totally fair, because it is true. Like all your concerns are valid. This is just a quick idea of a few headlines that people have talked about. So to start off with, like, I do understand your concern because there are countless projects available out there, a lot of verified or unverified projects as well. So unverified projects, developers may take that take some liberations in claiming the benefits of the projects. So even carbon neutral, we have an unverified project. We decided to have an unverified project to decrease that barrier to entry, because if it is a verified project, it usually comes at a higher cost level. So if you want to be able to still contribute to reforestation, but you don't have that cash flow, then you can possibly look at purchasing unverified offsets that we offer. So how we address that unverified offset, we would staple it to a verified offset so that you are getting the carbon, you're getting the carbon from both that verified offset, but also contributing to those reforestation co-benefits that I just spoke about. In addition to having those concerns about unverified offsets, people also have concerns about verified offsets. So I'm sure you've probably heard in the media, there's a bit of scrutiny for different methodologies and different projects. So carbon neutral also has a verified project. Our project is a gold standard project. It's the first and only one in Australia. So in general, we've gone through that process of getting that verification, but it's impossible to 100% accurately measure all the sequestration that has occurred. Like I said, we've planted over 16,000 hectares. So if you can imagine us going for an audit every 3 to 5 years, we're using modelling from past performances, we're using satellite imagery and GIS data, but then also we have a gold standard auditor that comes in and measures our project from randomly chosen sites. So can you imagine how long this person would take to measure every single tree over 16,000 hectares? By the time that they've done, it'll be a few years, and probably they'll have to do it all again because the trees have changed, different conditions have occurred. So it's just not viable. So we do understand that it's not physically possible, but we do use the best educated estimations to make sure that the amount of credits issued through the verification bodies has a good enough confidence interval to know that those credits have been able to sequester, those units have already sequestered carbon. So in addition to that, depending on the type of project, I do understand that some projects might have a net negative outcome that might outweigh the benefits. So an example of this, you can imagine large hydropower. Hydropower is a renewable energy source, but in damming, to create that energy from the water, you can possibly displace communities. You're changing the natural landscape, so you're affecting the local flora and fauna. So maybe those net benefits of that renewable energy isn't worth it for all the other natural and social and economic impacts from creating a project like a large-scale hydropower. And also another common argument is that a lot of people might think, oh, I've got carbon credits here. I don't really need to do reduction strategies. I don't really need to go through this whole rigmarole of redesigning my logistics pipeline, redesigning my buildings. So that idea of carbon credits a lot of people might think, oh, it's actually delaying actual behaviour, actual reductions, actual preventions. But like I said before, it's about having a multiple pronged approach. We're looking at reduction, but at the same time, if that reduction strategy is going to take time, or right now you've cost inhibited or technology inhibited, then carbon credits can help you bridge that gap. So as we've weighed the pros and cons, there are still benefits and still merits in using carbon credits. But if you're still skeptical and you're not sure about the quality, the reliability, you could have a look at other ways of measuring those carbon offsets. So one of them that we use quite often is measuring them against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Also, you can look at independent project rating companies like Silvera, B0 or Renosta. So just as an example, our Yarra Biodiversity Corridor project addresses 7 SDGs. It was independently audited. But then also we're a reseller as well. So we look at quality projects that do satisfy a lot of SDGs and have good ratings. So one of the example is a Rimba. It's an Indonesian avoided deforestation project called Rimba. It satisfies all 17 SDGs and have been recognised as a lighthouse project by Silvera. So in conclusion, carbon offset presents us with valuable opportunities to address climate change, promote environmental stewardship and support sustainable development. However, it's also critical to address all the challenges associated with understanding and choosing those carbon credits and making sure that this net zero is not a mere distant dream, but a profound calling that is going to happen hopefully within our lifetime. So every moment counts, and hopefully together we'll strive for a greener and more sustainable future. Thank you.